Thanks for inviting us here. I guess I'm supposed to stand here and talk. To the summit here for patriots across the country. I'm here with Jeanette Finicum. She's the widow of Lavoy Finicum. He was shot and killed in 2016 in Oregon on January 26th. In 2010, I was labeled a white supremacist, far-right extremist, and a domestic terrorist by several different groups. Primarily, this came about because the IRS was targeting our nonprofit, and they wanted our donor lists. They wanted everybody who attended, their names, their numbers, their addresses. They wanted our agendas, what we talked about. And we were in direct contact with the person who was directly under Lewis Lerner. If you don't know the whole story, Lewis Lerner, IRS, they were targeting groups called Tea Parties back under the Obama administration. And what they were targeting them for was they were being labeled extreme. They were being labeled white supremacist, domestic terrorist, far right, hate groups, patriot movement, constitutionalists, neo-Nazi, nativist, nationalist, fascist, anti-government, reject federal.
Mark Lamb. Mark, you just got back from a conference centered on the border crisis. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, I just got back from a national interdiction conference, Dagan, in Baltimore. And what we learned is that...
Sorry about that. There we go. I'll just leave it right there. So we, I joined the Tea Party movement in 2009. Well, I started going to meetings, doing research in 2008. Because President Bush did the stimulus bill, and I have a finance degree, and so I was taught in my master's program that what they were doing, that if you did that kind of activity with the money, you force someone to make a decision, then you take their money to fix the problem. It's a Ponzi scheme. And so it's illegal, and you can go to jail for a long time like Bernie Madoff. Anyway, long story short, Clinton, Bush, Obama were doing that. It was a Ponzi scheme related to money and what they were forcing people to do. And so I went to a meeting because of that. That's the reason I got involved in politics. And so I joined the Tea Party, but I learned that there was a whole bunch of other problems. There was immigration, comprehensive sex education, gun safety control. You know what I mean? There's all these different kinds of issues, and everybody came to the meeting and they all had different issues. And of course, I was the only one there who knew about bonds and that stuff. And so my previous life, I'm an Air Force retiree. I used to work on military aircraft, specialized in avionics, guidance control, communication, navigation equipment. And so I was highly trained in preventing planes from crashing. Specific systems related to navigation, communications, radar, that kind of stuff. And so what they taught me in my training was troubleshooting, how to troubleshoot stuff. And so when I sat in the meeting and I heard all these people talking about different problems, at least that's what they called them, I realized there was a significant problem. That is, everything they were bringing up are called symptoms in my world. They're symptoms. And the way we fix airplanes, or the way you fix on any kind of equipment, is you have to understand the symptoms, all the symptoms, so you can troubleshoot to the problem. The problem and the symptoms aren't the same thing. So when I was labeled white supremacist, all this stuff, I was like, I was born in England. I was raised in South Korea. I served my entire Air Force career in Tokyo, Japan. So, it was just new to me, that whole concept of you're a white supremacist, you're an extremist, you're anti-government, all this stuff. I was like, whoa. So I began to troubleshoot the symptoms, because my natural training, or my military training is take the symptoms, troubleshoot it to the problem. And so the media began labeling us. This was back in 2010. They were labeling us white supremacists, domestic terrorists, far right, all those names, all those labels. So the media was doing this, and the IRS was targeting us. And then the Republican Party in the state of Tennessee, specific component of the Republican Party, seemed to be this kind of untouchable group. I don't know what else to call them. I'm not saying they're elitist or anything like that, but there was just this untouchable group in the Republican Party that was also in the state of Tennessee, that was also targeting people like me. And of course, you guys, targeting people like you now, right? And so I began to try to figure out the pieces of, are these people connected? This group inside the GOP, these media folks, internal three-letter agencies at the federal level, academia, teachers and professors, jurisprudence, attorneys, certain attorneys and certain judges, nonprofits, Southern Poverty Law Center, Anti-Defamation League, Political Research Associates, civil society, open societies, Strong Cities Network, International Strategic Dialogue, these kinds of entities from internal of the Republican Party, this group that seemed untouchable, the three-letter agencies, the media, academia, jurisprudence, non-government organizations, and other entities, and started piecing together that the labeling, the calling of names was their, I call it word warfare. And essentially, this word warfare, using white supremacist and domestic terrorist and far-right extremist or right-wing extremist, has its roots. It goes beyond 1990s, but specifically gains traction in the United States in 1992 with Ruby Ridge in Idaho. It continues to 1993 with Waco, using not white supremacy from 92, but religious right-wing extremism in 1993 with Waco. And then it is cemented at the federal level because of Timothy McVeigh being a military veteran. So when you put these three pieces together, you can tie this directly to the Anti-Terrorism Act of 1996. Bill Clinton convinced Congress, and the House was controlled by Speaker Newt Gingrich, the Republican Party, and they introduced and passed the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act. And what this law did, it allowed the DOJ two things. If you think about a dog with a leash, right? You can have two dogs. Let's say we have two Chihuahuas. You have one Chihuahua with a short leash, and you have another Chihuahua with a long leash. What this did with the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act, it authorized or allowed the DOJ to have a longer leash. So I'm trying to summarize it because it's complicated legal nonsense. You know what I mean? The mumbo jumbo stuff. But essentially, lengthened their leash and allowed them to do two things. Number one, it allowed them to seek higher sentences for anyone that was labeled white supremacist, domestic terrorist, right-wing extremist. We can go for longer sentences. So I'm going to bring that to right now. So January 6th, how long have these people been in prison?
6 months.
Okay. BLM Antifa, after trying to burn down the federal facility in Portland, how many months were they in prison? Less than 48 hours. Less than 48 hours. They did go to prison. 48 hours or less. Okay. I want you to, that's so you have something to compare to. Okay. That goes directly to the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act, but it's tied to Timothy McVeigh, military veteran. It's tied to religious, so-called right-wing extremist Waco, and supposedly connected to 1992 Ruby Ridge white supremacy. White supremacy, far-right extremism, military veterans. You follow me? So the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act gives the DOJ a longer leash. And what it does is it allows them to do two things. Number one, look for those longer sentences. Number two, it gives them a hall pass, and I'm using everyday language. It's much more complicated legally. A hall pass to withhold exculpatory evidence. Evidence that you need in order to prove your innocence. So they can have longer sentences, keep you in longer, and along the way, stall you in obtaining the evidence you need in order to fight your case. That originates in 96, okay? When we move to 2001, and there's other things. We have the World Trade Center bombings in 93, right? Okay, there's all those things. In the meantime, 2001 happens, and we have the World Trade Center, right? The planes, you saw the planes fly into the building. Okay, so that's September 11th. October of 2001, President Bush gets Congress to sign the Patriot Act, or pass the Patriot Act. Now, the Patriot Act has all kinds of things in it that are disturbing. However, there's one that is extremely important, and it is the nexus of why we're in the midst of the struggle that we're having. So I'm trying to summarize this for you as best as I can. So to be classified as a terrorist, you must be connected to a Secretary of State or Department of State listed or designated international group that they call terrorist. Okay? So for you to be considered a terrorist, currently under federal law, they must be able to prove or show that you, Paula, are connected to the Russian imperial movement, for example. Now, the Russian imperial movement is the first white supremacy organization to be listed as a terrorist organization, and that was done under the Trump administration. Now, prior to that, it was primarily organizations like Al-Qaeda, things like that, okay? So, in 2001, we had an international terrorist attack on the United States. It was made up of foreigners, right, who were connected to international terrorist organizations. But in the Patriot Act, what they did, and when I say they, I'm referring to the bad guys. And I'll talk about the bad guys later. Right now, I want you to understand how this is connected to you right now. They added a definition in Title 18, Section 2331, Part 5 of the Patriot Act. Okay? This law adds, it has the international terrorism definition, but it adds in Section 5 domestic terrorism definition. This definition is very broad, the current domestic terrorism definition. So what it says is, it is acts of violence that appear to intend, literally it says, I'm trying to figure out how to say things in simple language and not the legal mumbo jumbo, because I know that gets kind of mushy. I get it. Anyone who appears to intend to coerce or intimidate a civilian population, a government policy, or any government official or building. Okay? So I'm summarizing it, but you can Google and search on your own. Title 18, 23315. It says, anyone who appears to intend. I want you to think about what that means. Anyone who appears to intend to coerce or intimidate a civilian population, government policy, government official, or government building. All right? So when you're thinking about what you're going through right now, and how the media refers to January 6th as an insurrection, but they refer to BLM and Antifa as peaceful protests. I know we kind of, when we're in our midst, we kind of make fun of it, but it's serious business. It's absolutely critically for the safety of your kids and what you guys want to do with your movements. It's critically important that you understand the international connection to domestic terrorism. Right now, there are certain Republicans, that group I was referring to, that I don't know how to label, we have names for them, but there's this like untouchable Republican. Then there's the far left Democrats. Then there's the far left media. There's far left academics like teachers and professors. There's far left organizations like Southern Poverty Law Center or Burn, Loot, Murder, Antifa, right? Then there's far left organizations like civil society, those are global groups like George Soros, United Nations kind of stuff. These groups are connected to each other for one purpose. And they need to disconnect international connection in order to label anyone defending the United States as a domestic terrorist. That is their goal. That's their current, right now, before you objective. So January 6th, these are pawns on a chessboard in order to get many of them to plead guilty. So it's incredibly important. I'm going to go to my second point is that you get these folks. I know it's hard on them. You do not want them to plead out. It's absolutely critical. Somehow you communicate to them, we're standing with you with tears if you have to. Don't do it. It's a chess move. And the reason why they want the plea deal is because then they have case law precedent. They can say we have a precedent and these are domestic terrorists, Your Honor. I want to give you an example practically. So the gentleman who was given 8 months in prison, so if you go through the transcripts, there's a section where the female DOJ prosecutor, it's at the sentencing phase. And literally, so she says to the judge, she says, Your Honor, I know there's no legal charge for domestic terrorism. That's incredibly important. All right? I know there's no charge for domestic terrorism, but we need to send a message. And the message is not to burn, loot, murder, or Antifa, or the far left things that I described, or the small elite group, or whatever they're called in the Republican Party. The message is to you. It's to you. It's to the American people. It's to the moms that are waking up to having a foreign object with foreign fluids injected into their children like pedophilia. It's the mask mandates and now COVID 2.0. You understand? And you guys all know when you're trying to communicate with your neighbors and your friends and at the church and stuff, and people just don't understand. To bottom line this, as simple as I can make it, the current objective is to disconnect the international requirement connection to people like you, people like me, Jeanette, Lavoie, whatever, okay? Once they sever the international connection requirement, they now have a completely different law enforcement approach. What you see with January 6th and it's called honeypot gaslight doctrine, where they plan this out before and they say, you guys are extreme, so it's better that we radicalize you first. That doctrine has been at play since the early 2000s, okay? And so, a couple things to talk about related to what you can do. So the state legislature, and I know you all have different state legislatures with different political conditions. Some are, highly with that small group of Republicans, very difficult for you to talk and then for them to listen. Maybe you have a lot of Democrats. You know what I mean? You have to navigate those things. But it is imperative that you begin the process of at least lobbying your legislators at the state level to define, to create, to discuss, to debate the need for checks and balances between your local and state law enforcement and their relationship to federal police forces. Let me explain. So in Jeanette's case, Lavoie goes to Oregon. The FBI comes in and they speak to the Oregon State Police, particularly their intelligence SWAT interdiction units. Then they speak with the Harney County Sheriff, and they basically say, I wasn't in the meeting, but essentially, I'm speculating it goes something like this. You have a national security threat in your state. Domestic terrorists such as Lavoie Finicum and Ammon Bundy are planning to carry out acts of violence to coerce and intimidate the civilian population of Burns, Oregon. That's number one. Number two, they have taken over a federal facility. And number three, they have threatened federal officials. That fits all three, A, B, and C of the Section 18 definition of domestic terrorism. But here's the problem. Were any of them connected to internationally designated terrorist organizations? The answer is, so none of them could be charged as domestic terrorists. They could only be charged as trespassers. Let's go to January 6th. Yes? It's very much the same thing, okay? Because they use the coerce and intimidate, violating or trying to destroy government policy, and then taking over government buildings. So they fit the legal definition, but are any of them connected to international terrorists? So it's very important that you understand what I'm trying to tell you here, is that that is their goal at this exact moment. Right now, with the far left Congress, Pelosi, the select January 6th has nothing to do with the facts, and you all know that. They have only one objective: disconnect the international requirement so they can release federal law enforcement to deal with this. Yes. So, if you want to be effective, and I'm just barely scratching the surface here, you guys, because I know it's a lot to absorb, and you're all trying to figure out, what do I do? You know, how do we wake people up? All this stuff, okay? Is practically start building relationships with your representatives and senators at the state level, with your community that have been affected by the lockdowns or the January 6th events. And then start debating the need to create a state law that requires the federal government, when they come into your state, can you prove that there is an international connection to these people? You guys understand what I'm saying? You can start this. This is not a small or a light matter. Okay? If you can get your state legislature to realize, okay, I don't support terrorism. That's probably why you guys, election integrity, why you form your military. You don't support destroying America, right? How many of you guys hate America? Anybody here hate America? Part of the Hate America team? All right, how many of you want to defend, save, restore America? So you're part of that team? The people doing this to us, their agenda is to destroy the Save America, Defend America, etc. team. One of their chess moves is using the January 6th folks, then using the Whitmer kidnapping case, then using the Russian collusion, then using the Bundy folks, then using Eric Parker, then using Lavoie, using Timothy McVeigh, using Waco. Do you see? To be able to argue that we need to take the international connection away as a requirement for defining domestic terrorism. So your state legislators have the ability to pass a law that says, listen, we don't agree with terrorism, but federal government, when you come into my state and you say that she is a domestic terrorist, can you show us the evidence that she is connected to the Russian imperial movement, which is labeled an international terrorist organization under the Trump administration?
Question. This is exactly why DC police are now being moved into all of the states, all 50 states.
Correct.
To help push this.
Correct. Yeah, there's all of these small little tactical things that they're doing. But the umbrella for this is a big one. This one here in the international connection is a big one. So whatever you can do to build relationships, to make that clear, is like, wait a minute. Domestic terrorism, we don't support domestic terrorism. We don't support international or foreign entities committing acts of domestic terrorism on our land. So prove that we're connected to international. Once they legally separate the international terrorism requirement, what you see with censorship and cancel and all those things, it is tip of the iceberg, you guys. This tip of the iceberg stuff. So, and I don't mean, I'm not a fearmonger. This is very, what I do with Center for Self-Governance is we teach political leadership. I don't teach political fear. This has been Center for Self-Governance students from across the country researching and trying to identify the symptoms or the problem. We've got it down to the problem. The symptoms are all distractions. So we argue and fight over comprehensive sex education. We fight over the masks. We fight over the vaccines, right? All of our energy and time. Think about how much time you're like, and then you don't talk to each other anymore. So now you're not united. Now you're divided. Do you see my point? We teach political leadership to compete with the bad guys doing this to you, and your kids, your country. So the international thing is one piece of it. The other piece of this is competing with the words, the phrases. How many of you have been called a white supremacist? Okay, that language, it's what I call word warfare. Yes. The bad guys inject it into society and then they let society spread it around. Okay, so what you're facing is it's like kudzu. You guys know all about kudzu out here, right? Okay. It's like kudzu. It's just spreading and slowly strangling out the trees, right? Okay. The word white is an extremely important word warfare in the bad guys' lexicon. I use this word lexicon. You heard the lexicon? Lexicon is different than a dictionary. Dictionary just says what it means. Lexicon gives you what it means plus. This is what it looks like. When you're looking for it, you should look for this. Okay? So extremism lexicons in DHS and FBI and DOJ and NSA and CIA and DOD, you probably want to know what those lexicons say because it affects their training. Then the training is based on the lexicon. So they tell the trainees, the agents, this is what you should be looking for. Right? Because the lexicon describes, then the training is, this is what you look for. And then when they go out and they interdict, these young men, these young women, these agents are being taught, it's better for you to radicalize Paula before she's radicalized by other radicals. So then it's okay, this legal doctrine of gaslighting Paula through honeypotting her. They find out what she's interested in. She's interested in guns. She's interested in the flag. She's interested in states' rights. This is their training. So lexicon, that's what it looks like, extremist. Then the training, this is what you should look for. She's going to respond to these things. And then the honeypot is, we become the informant. We get inside your organization and we start saying, hey, maybe we should start blowing stuff up. Maybe we should go kill people because this is really getting out of hand, isn't it? Okay? That process of getting to January 6th has been around since the 90s. So it's very well established in the training of these three-letter agencies, and it's now spreading into your states and into your local law enforcement. So there's a couple things to dissect right there regarding the word white, because it's a starting point. It's a seed, right? You defend the United States, you are white supremacists. I mean, just literally yesterday, this black pastor came out and said, Asian supremacy is the fruit of white supremacy. Even though blacks may be doing most of the hate, those blacks, it is the fruit of white supremacy causing them to do that. Okay, right? And we're all in this room going, what? Time out. You know what I mean? Okay. Just understand that the word white, words are extremely powerful in how we compete. And so I'd encourage, if you have folks in your communities that would like to learn word warfare and political leadership, they should highly consider Center for Self-Governance training. Because our goal is to help you compete with the word white, to prevent the separation of the word international. Does that make sense? Yes. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I'm saying, because it's more complex than that. However, if you learn the system and understand how the words are weaponized, you can be competitive instead of demoralized or becoming more rigid, ready, let's go, which I understand. But these people have no competitors at the word warfare level.
Can you give an example? Can you give an example of your team's success so that they can understand how effective a handful of people can be?
Yes.
We're talking like 4 or 5 or 6 people. It's
yes.
not an army.
But they have to understand the weaponization. We call it the weaponization of labels. And anyway, so the word white. Let's start with the word white. So if you think about it, everything in America right now, if there's a problem, you blame it on white, right? Okay, so in political leadership or strategic leadership, how do you defeat that? You can't say, well, I'm not a white supremacist. You can't do that because what's happening in the culture, it's like that black pastor. It's now here. It's coming out here. And he's trying to motivate his parishioners down here to do something about it, right? Okay, so how do you compete with the word white? Well, first of all, I'd say, how many of you support white supremacy? Okay. How many of you reject racial supremacy? Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is because in word warfare, you're either taking a word back or you're marginalizing a word, or you're destroying its meaning, like completely changing it. It's literally three things, okay? So in this case, racial includes how many races? White includes how many races? So that you can tell their objective is the United States. It has nothing to do with actually dealing with white supremacy. Now, what if you started, I'm telling you literally, like international, work with your legislator, this is another thing for you to do. What if you were to put out statements, we reject all racial supremacy? Okay, now, success. The entire state GOP of Idaho unanimously passed this resolution. It originates from here, goes through our training, the graduates take it, and they success. So CSG doesn't take credit for it. She's like, tell your success. Well, our success is our students. It's our students. It's the leadership. It's their leadership. So they got the entire GOP, including a small group from this class, and they've started, I can either confirm or deny, started creating divisions in that small group. Okay? But that passed unanimously. Now I want you to think about the fruit of that. So when someone says you're a white supremacist, what does that mean?
I do not practice racial supremacy.
Right. And then you can literally, you now own the conversation. Do you practice racial supremacy? It totally flips the entire script. The media can't, there's not a competitive advantage here because they have, like an army, they've seized control of like a piece of property called white. So when you talk Arabic, Asian, Hispanic, black, rainbow, whatever other color supremacy, Jewish, you name it, supremacy, they don't own any of it. But now you have taken this land called racial supremacy, and it opens the door for you to own the conversation, especially with your neighbors who think of you as. But now you're like, clunk, right? You've cracked, I call it the mind-forged manacle, where they are thinking that you are a white supremacist, but in fact, you know you're not. So seize control of the word racial. I mean, literally, I'm white, V, so think of like MMA. Tonight's heavyweight championship of the world. 4-round bout, to the death, white versus racial. You know what I'm saying? Literally 2 words, okay? Every single sentence you say, every debate you have, every communication as you try to convince people to do liberty things, never, ever white, always. And when you do say white, it's always disgusting. Why does the Hate America team only reject white supremacy? Why won't they reject all racial supremacy? The Hate America team likes to throw the Defend America team under the Hate America bus. Like the January 6th folks. Do you see my point? So you're literally now in control, from word warfare perspective, of defending the United States that rejects racial supremacy. They don't own it. That's my point, is you can seize it, because they're not seizing control of it right now. So when you do seize it, that's when they will get more violent. They will become more agitated because they've lost control of the word white. Why do they want control of the word white? To collapse the United States. It's an overthrow. Like it's a passive-aggressive revolution. Okay, so international connection, make sure you have some check and balance, or fight for it. Fight for the check. Call your congressman. Talk to them and say, listen, we don't want you guys separating the international thing. We already have criminal code for someone breaking glass. True? There's already a code for trespassing. So everything they do is, we're going to make it seem bigger than trespass and breaking windows. We're going to call it domestic terrorism. And the reason why is they need to the bad guys, the Hate America team. Matter of fact, you should weaponize Hate America, Save America team and draw everyone to the Save America team, because our agenda is reject racial supremacy. All of it. You want to be on the Save America team or the Hate America team? Right? Okay. So International separation, make sure you weaponize the word racial. It's bigger land, it's more than, and you can draw more people to your efforts, okay? The third piece here, and I gave the example, right? GOP, Idaho.
Yeah.
They unanimously passed reject all racial supremacy. It's starting to pass in other places on the West right now, in county GOPs, county commissions, city councils, statewide GOPs, because they're starting to realize the word warfare is something they need to do. Okay, the third thing. Let me think here. Sometimes it's hard to know where to go because it's so big, right? Well, why don't we just leave it at that? Those are two simple things that you can work on. But building relationships with your local, state, and federal delegations on the international connection question. And don't be extreme in your language, like it's the end of the world, it's apocalyptic. No, be very practical and pragmatic. Mr. Representative, January 6 people are in jail for 6 months. Burn, loot, murder destroys federal building 48 hours. Or less with $50 fines. We're just saying that if we have a check and a balance, maybe we could prevent both or treat both as crimes that already exist and get them to acknowledge or at least have the conversation, because you'll be able to identify quickly who is part of the Hate America team, whether they're G or R or D. Pretty quick. On the racial supremacy side, that's for your neighbors and your friends, your people when you're talking to folks. Do you know what I mean? You're trying to build relationships with the folks who are not awake. Weaponize the word racial and literally disgust on your face, Hate America team. Why do they only reject white supremacy? America is built on rejecting all racial supremacy, right? And then I'll do one more, third, is if you want to start separating the bad guys from you, because right now the media portrays you as the good guys or the bad guys. Academics, they portray you as good or bad. Lawyers and judges. Republican, a small group, and the Democrats. Think about it. And now it spreads into your neighborhoods and your friends and your family. Okay. I highly recommend that if you want to create a new mind-forged manacle, the way people think, is start labeling the other side as the Hate America team. Now think about this. They own the word hate. You're in a hate group, right? You have the Confederate flag. You guys are hate, bigots, supremacists. All the labels. Start labeling the bad guys Hate America. Very simple, 2 words. Do you hate America? Right? Every conversation. Are you on the Hate America team? Is that your Hate America agenda? Is that your Hate America policy? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Then start positively portraying yourself as the Save America team. Now understand that they own the word save, and they say that anyone who says Save America is a white. So you immediately weaponize the word racial. Do you understand? This is word warfare. We're not talking like there's going to be some practicing today in the physical world. Okay? But in the political world, it literally comes down to word warfare. What does it mean? And do we have control of it? So, Hate America versus the Save America team. Right? So I want to finish kind of this 3-pronged approach for you by saying what I think the Save America agenda is. Right? So I consider myself a Save America teammate. I don't own cows, so I'm not on the ranching team. I'm not in the militia where I live, so I'm not in the militia team. I'm not in the mom's anti-vax, that whole thing. I guess I'm not on the anti-vax team. But what if we were all, despite our symptoms, vax, militia, you know what I mean? What if we were all on the Save America team? And our Save America agenda was easy to understand. The Save America teammates and their agenda, they all reject racial supremacy. The Save America team wants to end all bureaucratic bullying. The Save America team wants to restore faith and election integrity. The Save America team wants to fund our local law enforcement and prevent the nationalization of police forces. The Save America team wants to dismantle divisive critical race theories. Do you understand what I'm saying with this language? Because the crack you need is to marginalize burn, loot, murder organizers with their media counterparts, with their lawyer counterparts, with their, you understand? They're a very small group. But they use words to manipulate the minds. So, I guess walking away from this talk, number one, do what you can to build relationships with your local, state, and federal electeds and bureaucrats like police officers, sheriff's deputies, your state bureaus of investigators, to start having the conversation about preventing the federal from disconnecting international, and if they do, creating a check and balance in your state so that state and local resources will not be joined to federal resources if they can't prove an international connection. It's super critical for your safety, for our ability to save America. The second is related to the word white. Always demonize the word white and always refer to the Hate America team. Why don't they reject all race? Why is it just white supremacy? Do they hate America? Do you see my point? Okay. And then third, start using and marginalizing the Hate America team from the Save America team and make the Save America team super positive, right? Doesn't that sound positive? Save America team rejects racial supremacy. The Hate America team doesn't. Save America team wants to end bureaucratic bullying for everybody. Hate America team doesn't. And you have examples. Now you can give examples, right? How they don't reject racial supremacy, it's just white. How they don't end bureaucratic bullying because they'll let the FBI honeypot and gaslight while they demonize your sheriff. Do you see my point? So easy. And then every agenda point, don't get into the meat of all the details of, we just want to resolve the border crisis. Don't talk about the border walls and you know what I mean, and they're coming across and they're murdering the pedophiles. We just want to resolve the crisis. Make sense? People are attracted to positive, and they're attracted to hope, and they're attracted to a future that they can be a part of. And you can start identifying practically with your family members that see you in the wrong way, with your neighbors who have been trained to look at you as the problem, as the villain, as they literally think you're the Hate America team. But if you seize control of it, they don't own that. They don't want America in any of their language. If they do, it's like systemic racism. No good cops in a racist system. Isn't that weird? No good cops in a racist system, but they want cops to protect themselves. Right? So the Hate America team has a Hate America agenda. And if you don't want to be a part of the Hate America team and their agenda, join the Save America team. So, in conclusion, I created the Center for Self-Governance to figure out why I was being labeled a white supremacist when I didn't even grow up in the United States. My stepmother's Korean, best man at my wedding was a black dude, but none of those facts matter, right? It's the fact that I support the United States of America, and they literally believe, the bad guys literally believe, it's a racist system that needs to be taken down. This is their strategy, and they're carrying it out. So I hope that you'll prayerfully consider our leadership training. It is hard. It is not easy because it deals with a lot of words. And word warfare is not easy because you're dealing with people's emotions. One word to the left and the same word to the right can have two completely different meanings. Some of our other successes of our CSG students, I have over 200 of my students are now elected across the United States. From school up to state, I'll have my first congressman that will be a CSG student, hopefully in 2022. See how he does. One of my students, a guy named Vince Haley from Virginia, was the speechwriter for Donald Trump for all 4 years. Our students have Eric Parker. You guys all know the name Eric Parker? I'll tell you a story about Eric Parker then. How about that? So Eric Parker is a student of Center for Self-Governance. You need to have him here so he can tell you the stories from his perspective. I can just tell you so many stories. But I'll tell you one. So Eric was in jail for 2 years. And if you watch the Bundy standoff, he's the guy with his gun through the thing. And the DOJ was doing the 1996 thing where they were withholding exculpatory evidence and prolonging his prison sentence. That comes from the 1996 thing. By the way, that's another thing you can work on. Hey, can we reform that, fix that, get rid of that? So Eric had been tried twice, and both were hung juries. And what that means is the jury could not unanimously decide guilt or innocence. Well, the vote in the first trial was 10-2 for not guilty. The second trial was 11-1 not guilty. And they were going to try him a third time. So it's kind of like, it's not double jeopardy. Double jeopardy meaning you can't be tried for the same thing twice when you are found not guilty. Okay, so the key is you have to be found not guilty. Hung juries have an unlimited, they can try you. So maybe that's a reform idea for criminal justice reform is, listen, 3 trials and you're done. You know what I'm saying? You get a hung jury, and you do this one, and this hung jury, we're going to count you as innocent. You see my point? So that doesn't, because we know a guy, Jeanette can tell you a story, a guy named Rick Kerber. He was the paralegal that's responsible for those guys getting acquitted in Oregon, and he's responsible for the strategy for getting the case dismissed. He's in jail for 14 years right now.
The 5th trial.
After the 5th trial.
The federal government, and then they finally got him 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks before my oral arguments, and he was the
Main strategist.
Main strategist for our team, and he ended up in jail 2 weeks prior to Morgan giving his oral arguments. It's strategic in the legal.
It's strategic.
It is so strategic. The judges and the lawyers, if you don't play ball, they come after you one by one. The DOJ is after my attorney right now. After they went for Rick, after they went for Marcus, after all of these people that have been involved legally with the Bundy trials and with LaVoy Sinicum and with Rick are all either
Dead or in prison or under investigation. So it's important. I mean, that's another option. Sorry, I don't mean to download a lot, but that's another thing you could work on in criminal justice reform is, hey, not only does the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act need to be fixed, maybe we need to put a cap on the number of hung jury trials you can repeat. Like, maybe 5 is too much.
5 is way too many.
You know what I mean?
I think 3 is too many, to tell you the truth.
But that becomes part of the debate. Now you're having substantial conversations in your community. How do we reform that? Instead of complaining about it and saying how bad it is and saying, look at, oh my God, it's apocalyptic. What is your solution? Bring it to the table. Bring the victims from the 9/6. Bring the lockdown victims to your home privately. This is another one. Sorry, I'll download one more. Have them to your home, like a private dinner. Invite your elected officials from the local. Do you guys know any kids that committed suicide or parents that had kids who committed suicide because of lockdowns? You should have those parents and their siblings to your home for dinner with your school board and your city council and your county commissioner and your state delegates for Virginia or whatever they're called in the other states. And all you're doing is you're bringing these kind of solutions to the table, letting them have a voice, letting them have an ear, and you bring them tangible, practical, not, oh, it's terrible, we're in the world. You don't go there. Walk in there with, hey, we should introduce a law that says maximum 3 hung jury trials or whatever, 2. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. This is tangible that you can chew on. Bring it to the table. International connection. That's tangible, right? 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act. We need to reform that. That's tangible, right? Okay. I lost my whole place. So it's noon. It's time for lunch. We've got a few more minutes before we have to go. Does anybody have any questions for me? Because trust me, I can talk for hours. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Eric Parker, what a dear young man. So he went to Oregon because Bureau of Land Management, not burn, loot, murder. Bureau of Land Management put up these First Amendment zones. It was a big yellow 100-foot by 100-foot space. And they were telling the people, you have to go in there to have your First Amendment. And they were showing videos of the people like being thrown to the ground and tasered and all these other things. And so Eric went down there because he's like, this is a violation of their First Amendment. And he doesn't own any cows. So he was like, since the law enforcement was violating it, it's almost like he felt obligated to go defend their First Amendment. So he didn't go down there because of the cows, the court orders, the grazing fees, or any of the things that the Bundys had. He went down there because of the First Amendment zone. And he says so and testifies, all that stuff. But they would not allow him to bring that up in court. Like, what was your motive? They literally prevented him from saying, why did you do this illegal activity? Does it make sense? So he wasn't able to defend his position, saying, I saw them violating their First Amendment, and I don't believe the First Amendment is in this building. I think the First Amendment is when when Paula walks over there for lunch, her First Amendment goes with her. So there's this doctrine at the federal level that's being trained into these new agents. First Amendment is where I told you. Guys, I was in St. Louis Airport. I was literally in St. Louis Airport coming here, and I took this picture.
Can you shoot it up to that by chance?
Well, I'm just going to show you so you can see it. Okay, and I'll tell you what it is. You want to see it? I'll show you later. All right? This literally is the free speech booth. Okay? This is not fake. This is St. Louis Airport. Okay? And it literally says this is where you can go for your free speech.
You want me to picture it?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, keep talking.
My point is that's the reason Eric went to, because of this struggle. Is free speech in a booth? Or is free speech wherever you go? So if you walk over here, free speech walked with her too. Or is free speech, no, you have to come over here for your free speech. My point is that's why Eric went there. So if he's in court and he's being tried for being a bad guy, he'd say, well, Your Honor, the reason I went is because I don't agree with free speech is where you tell me to go, but free speech is wherever Ammon Bundy went, or wherever I showed up, or wherever Paula goes. There's that. Does it make sense? So Eric is now not able to defend himself in the trial, but the jurors are kind of like, something's not right. So that's why they voted 10-2 not guilty. Okay, so obviously that's probably demoralizing for Eric, because his hung jury, now they're going to try him again, and he has to wait. Are you going to try me again? And then he has to wait, and yeah, we're going to try you a third time. Now here's the secret. Beautiful, beautiful. Center for Self-Governance students organized in Idaho to do some, I can either confirm or deny stuff, okay? And some of the things that they may or may not have done is related to letters that were nonpartisan, signed by the state legislature of Idaho, that said, wait a minute, in America, we shouldn't do this to each other. Like use the federal prosecutors as political weapons. What Eric didn't know is that that's tied to the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act, okay? He's starting to learn this stuff now. In his world, he's like, has to wait. And then the DOJ's world, they have a really long leash. They can hold him there a long time. They can hold evidence and make it difficult. You see my point? But the jury's not buying it. So the CSG students got a bipartisan letter, and they had it sent from the legislature, and had it sent to Attorney General Sessions. Now there's a guy in the Congress from Idaho, his name is Raul Labrador, and that happens to be Ammon Bundy's congressman. Now this guy, when he was congressman, was on the House Judiciary Committee because he's an attorney, he's Hispanic, and he's the founder of the Freedom Caucus, right? Well, by the way, guys, if it's lunchtime, so if you're ready to go, don't feel obligated to sit. Like I said, you got to turn my spigot off, or we'll just keep going. Okay? So Eric Eric is obviously in prison, demoralized. Andrea is working to get the story out. But Center for Self-Governance students in Idaho organized to get this letter written, bipartisan, sent to Attorney General Sessions, and then Raul announces that he's going to run for governor. Now, what I teach people in my classes is, what does all that mean? I try to break it down. Raul essentially wants to be the first Mormon president. And to get there, he either has to go to Senate or he has to go to governor or be like Trump, a business guy with a lot of money. He's not this one. He's not going to go to the Senate because they won't accept him there in Idaho. And so he says, I could become governor in order to become president. So now we know what motivates Raul Labrador. So I started asking everybody, the CSG students, I said, so are you happy with the judge's behavior in relationship to Eric's trials and Ammon Bundy and Marcus Mumford being tasered and all that stuff? And everybody's like, oh yeah, it's the worst thing ever. The judges, they're terrible, they're behaving, but there's nothing we can do about it. Which is bullshit, excuse my language. It's because the American people don't know the system. So I'm going to ask you guys, and sorry, and this is just so you understand where I'm going with my training program, is how long do judges sit in their seats?
Lifetime.
No.
They're not supposed to, but that's what's happening.
So remember word warfare, we say for life, and so we're confirming it. How long do they sit in their seats?
As long as we let
No.
I know.
No.
You fit in your class.
The key for judges at the federal level is that as long as they're good behavior. Now, how many of you guys think that the judge in Kate Brown in Oregon's behavior was bad?
Yep.
Okay, how about the judge Gloria Navarro in Eric's case, good or bad? So how long do they sit there?
For good behavior.
You've been trained, like on purpose, literally trained to say for life. You need to break that. You've literally got to stop, like take it out of your vernacular, and literally they sit in there for as long as they are. Now, the question is, I understand. I understand you're jumping way down to the end. I get it. But it doesn't start with life. It starts with the definition of the word bad. Who has control of the word bad? No. Who's they? I need a specific. No. Nope. The House Judiciary. I am literally not kidding. Donald Trump was impeached how many times? Okay? Where did it start? House Judiciary Committee. Make sense? Okay, so Raul Labrador, my point is, if you understand this and you don't apply this according to how you think it works, how does it work? It's like doctors. They're not interested. They're interested in how you feel, but they also want to know how the body is working, right? And our perception of the feeling of pain often doesn't match the reality of the problem. Often, all right. Same here. Judges do not sit in their seats for life in America. They sit in their seats as long as someone doesn't define bad behavior. Donald Trump, the House Judiciary. Donald Trump's behavior is. That's what they said. So where does it begin? House Judiciary Committee. My point is this. If you learn this stuff, you can get Eric Parker out of jail. Okay? So they're like stunned, and then they ask her question, well, what do we do? Because nobody listens and it's all bad and it's the end of the world. I said, Raul Labrador is Ammon Bundy's congressman. And he sits on the House Judiciary Committee, and we know what he wants. He wants to be governor so he can be president. So how do we think about it? They move you, right? How do you move them? The carrots. He wants to be president. So he has to go through governor of Idaho. So now our students are being trained in Idaho. Okay, there's 44 counties. That means he's going to go to a minimum of 44 town halls and asking for people's what? And $1, and a minute, and a contact. They get 4 things from you, and what do you get in return? You get censorship, cancel, imprisonment, death, right? My point is that now we understand what his motivations are. He wants 4 things from us. We want something from him. And the question was, from all the town hall meetings, are you willing to define Judge Kate Brown's behavior and Gloria Navarro's behavior as good or bad? he started walking out of the town hall meetings. That doesn't work really well when you want to run for governor. You start walking out. Because his answer to them was, we don't get involved in federal cases. Wait a minute. The Constitution, right? And it's not his fault. He's a Republican Hispanic. He's a good guy. He's on the Save America team, but he's eating the Hate America dog food. Okay? He's been trained that attorneys in the federal government at the federal level do not get involved, congressmen do not get involved in federal cases. It's not true. It's not accurate. So finally, he became so desperate because we know what his cheese is now. We know what the dog food he likes to eat, right? He finally calls Attorney General Sessions. And I can neither confirm nor deny that there's an audio of that phone call. But in that phone call, there may or may not have happened where Attorney General Sessions is asked by Raul Abador, have you received the letter from the bipartisan legislature regarding Eric Parker's case and trying him for 1 billion times? And Attorney General Sessions may or may not have said, no, I haven't received that. And in the room, there may or may not have been 2 deputy attorney generals, a guy named Rosenstein and another guy named McCabe. May or may not. All right? Now Attorney General Sessions may or may not be pissed. Because he didn't get the letter. Okay? So these people in Idaho, my point is, related to Eric Parker, these CSG students studied the system, understand the facts, knowing what he wants, then being able to move the pieces like a chessboard. Now Attorney General Sessions, we just found out, actually flew himself to Nevada to speak to Myrie face to face.
And also Judge Navarro, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, that's what I heard.
It may be, but I know for sure now that there was a travel 24 hours later, AG Sessions, face-to-face Myrie, you will do this for Eric Parker. You will either drop the case or you will offer him a plea deal and move on.
Because there were 5 Brady violations, right?
Oh, it's off the charts. Off the charts. Minimum of 5 Brady violations.
That they ruled on.
Right. Okay, now here's the key. So within 48 hours, Eric Parker is offered a plea deal of like $50 fine. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Like BLM? Okay. He's offered a fine and he pleads to some misdemeanor. So he's a misdemeanor, so he doesn't have a felon. He's not a felon. He has a misdemeanor and he pays like some $50 fine. And now he's free, running around in Idaho, doing cool things. What's that? Amazing things. That was political chess being played by folks behind the scenes because they knew the system, they built relationships, and they were moving the chess pieces. The results are Eric is out of prison. Gloria Navarro's behavior changed within 24 hours. It was mind-numbingly different. Andrea, if you have Andrea come tell the story, she was in the courtroom when her behavior went like this. The reason for that is because of that trip that the Attorney General made to meet with Myrie.
I was there and it was jaw-dropping. Because she was so evil every single day.
I know.
And it was just like, it was like a witch spinning.
So you literally don't have to use the impeachment thing, you just have to change their behavior. It's possible is my point. But you have to learn the system, you have to be willing to build relations, you have to understand who our opponent is. They're not just far left Democrats. Some of them are in the Republican Party, some of them are attorneys, some of them are academics, professors, etc. Yeah, media. Well, I hope every American, regular folks like you would, because ultimately keeping the republic is not our elected officials' responsibility. Keeping the republic is in our hands, and it doesn't just rely on the Second Amendment. It relies on our word warfare skill sets. So thank you guys. I'll be around for lunch if you have any questions. Thank you very much.